This video lecture is the first of a series of 3 lessons on graphics for technical communication. As your textbook says, the very first thing you need to know is that you must cite sources properly every time you borrow graphics. For the purposes of this lecture, I am borrowing a lot of examples from online, but in order to avoid the slides looking busy and confusing, we're only using the URLs of the original source. When you do your technical communication documents in the workplace or in school, you want to make sure that you cite them properly, whatever your instructor says, and matter of fact, whatever the law says. You don't want to get in trouble for that. And plagiarism is a real thing, even in the working world. So please don't be intimidated. Just know that I'm doing this to keep the screen from being cluttered. The first thing we're going to talk about is a very simple fact. Technical communication needs graphics. I hope you know that already, but we're going to discuss reasons why this is the case. First off, let's talk about instructional design. Instructional design is a field that is related to technical communication. In instructional design, it's all about telling people what to do and so that they learn what the subject is or how to do things. As you can guess, this is related to TechCom. There's a person very famous named Richard Meyer. He's a researcher on instructional media design. His multimedia principle says people learn better from words and pictures than from words alone. We hope this is common sense, but we often forget it when we are making instructions. It's much easier to type than to make graphics, so we tend to try to communicate a lot by graphics. Yet, we can learn better from the combination of words and graphics, so we should try to use graphics plus words. Also, while graphics are useful and helpful, if we only have graphics, we may not understand what the graphic means. So, again, when we have graphics, we need to explain what they are. We need to use both text and graphics as opposed to just text or just graphics. Here's an example of an instruction that uses only text. It has the graphic of the exclamation mark, but this graphic does not communicate the main information. That graphic is just a, hey, check this out. This is important. Notice. It has no other particular function. Since this instruction has only text information, we need to translate the information into visuals of the wheel nuts in our brain so we can properly do the task of loosening the wheel nuts. Perhaps you didn't think of this consciously, but whenever we consume text information to do tasks, we need to translate the information into visuals in our brain to get the idea of how we can actually do the tasks. Here's something similar, but this time this instruction has a graphic, so we don't need to translate the information in our heads. The creator of the instruction did the job for us. So if you look at the graphic on the right side, it gives us a lot of ideas of how the process of loosening wheel nuts looks. Of course, the graphic doesn't explain everything. Still, we can understand the full picture of how things work by combining the text information on the left and the graphic information on the right. Instead of translating the text information into visuals in our brains, we just need to compare the text and the graphic information to make sense of how to do the task. Richard Meyer also said, quote, "By using pictures, we can depict material in a form that is more intuitive and closer to our visual sensory experience." End quote. What this pretty much means is that visual information is intuitive to us. We are visual beings. We understand most information visually. So to clarify this point, it's going to be beneficial to briefly talk about semiotics. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the topic. It is a huge field. You can spend an entire career studying semiotics. But the concept of semiotics is beneficial whenever we think about visual communication. Two big concepts you need to know. First one is signifier. The second is signified. A signifier is the form of sign or the media that we use to communicate information. That signifier can be words, images, sounds, whatever it may be that communicates the ideas. The signified is the idea that is communicated by the sign or signifier. Here's a very famous, popular, and widely used signifier. It's a stop sign, right? So whenever we see the stop sign, we know, hey, we need to stop here. Again, visual information is intuitive to us. We can immediately understand this message. If we try to communicate the information, we need 4 words. Well, actually 5. You need to stop here. It takes more time to understand text information, and this is bad when we're driving a car because we need to take immediate actions. That's why most signs for cars are graphical as opposed to textual. Here's another famous signifier. If you look at this graphic of a girl and a boy, what does it tell you? Immediately you think, this is a restroom. So when we look for a restroom, we might be, let's say, in an emergency. It's very helpful that this information is communicated graphically. We can immediately get into a restroom when we need to without having to think, which one do I need? Which one is for me? I just look, boom, I know, and, no pun intended, I go. So take a look at this. The signifier in this case is the word flower. Whenever we see the word flower, we don't just take the letters as they are. We do not interpret that they are separate letters, F-L-O-W-E-R. No, they are very different. But together, the word flower means a plant of some sort that has something beautiful or cute about it. The one that comes to your brain might look different from the particular picture, yet whenever we see the word flower, whether that is consciously or subconsciously, we visualize some kind of flower in our brain. That's how we understand information. If we don't visualize a flower in our brain, that means we have not understood the written word. Here's another example. We see the word dog. What do you visualize? Something with 4 legs, possibly cute, furry, tail wagging, man's best friend. Maybe you think of your own dog in your house. Yet, the deal is here, anytime we see a word, we visualize the information. The particular dog you see may vary. The dog you think of is probably not the same as the dog you see here in the screen, but you always visualize in your brain somehow a dog. That's what we mean when we understand textual information. We've said a lot here, but the big point of this lesson is that you need to use graphics in technical communication. Graphics are intuitive information for our brain, so we use less energy to consume the information. It's much easier for readers to understand your writing if you try to communicate by visuals as much as you can. You'll be able to communicate much more by a single visual than by a lot of text. You've probably heard the idea that a picture is worth 1,000 words. It's not entirely true. It may be worth a couple of hundred, but the point being, yes, you need to use graphics in technical communication. You also need to use text. They are not mutually exclusive. They work together. So please, try to use graphics whenever you find it appropriate.